Hello, hello. Welcome to the Frame of Mind Coaching Podcast. I am Kim Addis, and I am the president of Frame of Mind Coaching. Today, I have a wonderful guest with me. Her name is Jeanette Winters, and she is the director, the CEO, the primary caregiver of an organization called Winters Advisory Group. Jeanette, welcome.
It's good to be here, Kim. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
So what is the Winters Advisory Group? What do you do? Who do you serve? And what's your focus?
We created Winters Advisory Group about 5 years ago to serve the talent needs of organizations, strategic alignment, hiring, employee engagement, anything that really deals in that three-legged stool of productivity, technology, and transformation as it relates to people.
Okay, good. So I love this subject. I'm getting excited already. So I really do want to talk about the first kind of avenue. When we think about talent, we think about finding and bringing in the best talent. How do we do that? I mean, they call it the war for talent. So how do we first find them? How do we entice them? And then how do we keep them?
Well, you know, Kim, just a little secret between the two of us, but we do a really bad job of it here in the field of HR. 30 to 50% of new executives fail within the first 18 months.
Wow, that's a high turnover.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there are some studies that show that the failure rate actually exceeds 50% and really inches up to 70%. Particularly in private equity and investor capital groups. So
why is that? Why is the failure rate so high? And what are we doing? Are we hiring the wrong people? Are these people just ill-equipped? Are they untrained? Like, what's going on?
I think it's a confluence of forces. And unfortunately, I think that we look all too often for that purple squirrel. And you may say, purple squirrel? Never seen one of those. You're absolutely right. Never seen one of those. And that's part of the problem. You'll look at a job description and it may have 30 requirements. And so who has all 30 of those? That ideal candidate? Well, that's the job description. That doesn't include what the manager may want and what the manager may need in terms of his or her management style, looking at the team composition and the company's culture or the organization's culture. And so without looking at all four elements, you really risk having a poor fit between the new hire and the organization that they join.
Okay, go back. What are the four elements exactly so that people can take notes and say, am I taking care of these four elements? What are they?
Number one is the job and the job description. What is a person being hired to do? Number two, manager. What does the manager need and want? And how will he or she manage that individual?
When you say manager, do you mean the person below or the person above?
The person to which this new hire will report.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Yes. So think of them as the hiring manager.
Okay.
Okay. The third is the team. Is the team welcoming? What do they expect? What do they need? And are they ready for new? Because no matter what composition an individual brings, they create a new element within that team. And as the Tuckman model, long ago and far away, has taught us, is that the instant someone new comes onto a team, it really thrusts the team right back to that stage of forming, of really figuring out who they are and who's going to do what and under what conditions. So the team has to be considered. And finally, the corporate culture. As my mentor used to say, these aren't bad people, they're just bad fit when we let people go. And that really is about culture and cultural fit. And not everybody is meant for every organization. And we need to really look to see whether that fit is the right one or not.
So let's go back and explore some of these things. When we look at what does the manager need? Like, is that unique? Is every manager different? Are some managers looking for things above and beyond or different from the job description? Or should that be encapsulated in the job description itself? Like, how do you differentiate between one manager's needs and another?
Oh, think about it. The people that you may have worked for or worked with, and all of us are human beings, and we all bring our own portfolio of the way that we handle situations. Some of us may emote more readily, some of us are more introverted, some of us need more process or more time to think. And so, yes, everyone is an individual, and that manager and the new employee really have to click. For me, I know that I can't work for a micromanager. I really communicate very well and consistently to let everybody know what's going on. I seek collaboration. And if somebody's asking, all about the nits and gnats of anything that I might be doing, that really gets in the way of my productivity. That wouldn't be a good manager-employee relationship for me.
Right. Right. So is this the manager trying to find someone who fits with their personal managerial style, leadership style?
The failure rate tells us that whatever it is we're doing, we're not doing real well at it. And I think what happens is that, and research is very clear about this, we hire who we look like. And so we think we're getting replicas of who we look at in the mirror. And you and I both know that's not very easy unless we have a twin sister.
Right.
So that's where getting a manager to be clear about their expectations is absolutely essential, because the manager-employee relationship is one that is critical to one's engagement, to the success of that individual as well as the team. And without that working, it's a no-go.
So let's go to the second thing, or maybe the third thing you said, which was the whole idea of getting the team prepared.
Yes.
How do you get the team prepared? I mean, they say they're prepared. They encourage you to hire. They say we need more resources. They're begging for more. And yet this person comes along and you notice that perhaps they weren't as prepared as we thought they were. So what are some of the things that we can do to prepare our teams more effectively?
Well, the long and the short of it is, shame on us if we didn't get the right person that we thought we were getting. Right. And so your comment about, well, they're not as prepared as we thought they were. Well, where did we miss in our evaluation, in our review of the candidate, that we missed something that we were expecting? And that's why a substantive and critically important conversation needs to be had at the team level. What are they looking for? And I often urge teams to consider diversity, and diversity of thought, of education, even a major. So, if you've ever worked with engineers, there's or an architect, individuals who have been trained in the science of how to put things together or examine things. Well, if you deal with an artist, they may have a very different approach to how they solve problems, handle data. And you need to make sure that not everybody sounds and looks like the person sitting next to you. And I do think diversity of thought, education, major, gender, race, nationality actually strengthens a team. But that's something you've got to get the team ready for, because given the issues we know we have in hiring, let's make sure that we're prepared for somebody who may be different than the person who sat in that chair before.
So how do we prepare for that? Like, if we're looking for diversity and we're bringing in new ideas, new values, even new perspectives to an organization that has been functioning perhaps the same way for a while, how do we integrate that person? How do we ready the team for so much newness?
Well, it depends upon what the call to action is. So if it is to do transactional activities, here's a job, get it done. But if it is on the more creative side or the investigatory, the research side, then that's really where people's hearts and minds are going to have to come together. And as I suggested, this type of evaluation of what the needs and wants are, and the characteristics of the people that we're looking to work with, are important to us. People talk about accountability. They talk about transparency, self-starter, bias for action. Well, are you prepared to let somebody make decisions? Under what conditions? Who makes the decision? Who gets to, navigate conflict and all of that? So really looking at team hygiene in terms of who, what, where, why, when, and how things will be handled in a team really gives the group there a sense of, okay, this is what we do now, but with somebody new, this would be very different.
So let's jump ahead to the subject of culture, because you brought that up earlier. Mm-hmm. So I mean, culture is an interesting topic because it's a little bit vague, right? In a lot of ways. Who's responsible for creating, setting culture? And when you bring in a new character on the scene, the dynamics change. So does that mean the culture changes? And who ultimately has control over culture? And when we're looking at culture fit, what are the elements we're trying to match up?
From my perspective, I really believe that the C-suite or ownership really needs to own the culture. They're responsible for it. The buck stops with them. And as a result, they're the ones that should be defining and describing who and what they're doing and how they're doing it. And that's what culture is. It is the guardrails of how we will treat one another, how we will get work done, and what work will we get done. So it tells people what they won't be doing as well as what they will be doing.
Right.
And so, that's where the C-suite or ownership, and in small businesses, that might be, like I am the owner of Winters Advisory Group. I set the culture for the work that we do. And it starts with values, needs, and wants. And so for me, I really want us to be reflecting on what our customers need and how we will fulfill that. Because unless we're doing that, then we're not fulfilling our obligations and our reason to exist. And so with culture, though, it can be as meaningful as wanting to do something for your community at large, doing something perhaps very close, like creating an organization that will be the legacy for your family. It really comes from your heart and soul as the leader, and making sure that you're aligned with the objectives. And that's where the secret sauce comes.
So if we were to move forward and think about, how do we screen? What questions should we be asking in the job interviews to really help us understand the candidate who's in front of us and whether or not they are in fact equipped, skilled, the right fit, will fit the culture, etc. How do we conduct interviews more effectively?
So I'm not a real fan of the types of questions that are quite in vogue right now. What kind of vegetable would you be if, it's like, I'm a vegetarian. I don't want to be a vegetable, but what do you get out of that? Do you get someone's ability to react in the moment, to bring out the comedic side of them, to lighten things up? If it's to lighten things up, that's one thing. But what you're really looking for is that alignment of values, needs, and wants. And, if someone values, for example, the environment and wanting to do the best for our planet, maybe they're committed to clean water or clean air, or reducing the use of plastics. And you find out, then in the interview, you find out that this person is vehemently opposed to plastics. Well, then being in plastic manufacturing is probably not the right place for them.
Right.
And so
is there a question, are there a set of questions that aren't about vegetables that could provide insight? Are there some questions that perhaps you say, these questions should never be missed?
Yeah. Tell me who you are and what matters to you. And really getting to know someone. And if you think about it, and I know this makes some people uncomfortable, but you really should know a person well enough that you would want to spend time having dinner with them, that you might date. And I don't mean to insinuate a social connection, but what you want to know is that there is enough alignment in values that you like this person, you're interested in spending time with them because you will, and that they share the interests that propel you to come to work every day.
Mm-hmm. So who are you and what matters to you? That's a good question. Let's go to this whole idea of having dinner. Is it a good idea to have dinner with the candidate? Is it a good idea to interview them more than once, multiple times? What's an ideal kind of process for vetting someone out or in?
You know, it depends upon what the role is going to be. And the more senior the role, the more individual interviews and activities that there will be. If you're interviewing for the C-suite, definitely having a meal with someone is appropriate because you can lean in, you don't have any disruptions, and you can really get to see how someone acts. When I'm out to, let's say I take a candidate out to lunch, I'm watching to see how they're treating the waiter or the waitress. Right. I'm looking to see if they are gracious if something goes wrong. You know, they're the sorts of reactions that, particularly when customer service really matters to an organization, then you say, if they can't deal with, you know, getting French fries instead of, you know, mashed potatoes without melting down, can they really handle the job? Mm-hmm. And those are the sorts of things, getting to know someone. And so the more senior the position, yes, I think having meals with people is the critical element of that. One caveat that I would offer here, this idea of taking people through, you know, days and days of interviews and having them write, you know, their philosophy of the world, their philosophy of leadership and all, I just don't buy it. First of all, we're not getting any better outcomes than this. And I do like and advocate the appropriate, underlined, italicized, appropriate use of pre-employment assessment tools. And, you know, there's over 800 in the market today. I'd probably consider only 3 or 4 of them. But there are tools out there that scientifically can help an organization align culturally, make sure that the fit is there in terms of the goals and objectives, and even looking at whether or not the person has the behavioral attributes that will enable them to be successful, whether or not they can operate independently, whether they are sociable, whether they deal with data.
So some assessments carefully chosen are a good idea. I'm kind of curious. Let's go back to the dinner meal where the person gets French fries instead of mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
Let's go back to that.
Sure.
So the person does get French fries instead of mashed potatoes. What are you looking for? What is the appropriate response? I mean, for me, as if I were in that situation and I received the French fries instead of the mashed potatoes, understanding that it was an important job interview, I would decide in my mind, this is not an important subject. Let it go. Don't eat the fries. Carry on. But is that an appropriate response to like not deal with the issue? Or is an appropriate response to say, hey, I think you made a mistake. I asked for French fries and not mashed potatoes or whatever, the other way around. Like, what is appropriate? What are we looking for?
Graciousness and acknowledging that we can all make mistakes and it's not the end of the world. I am a vegetarian. I wasn't joking when I said that earlier. And so inevitably, I will get a salad that has bacon on it. And so for me, the gracious and appropriate response is to ask, you know, pull the waiter or waitress aside and explain, I'm a vegetarian and specifically asked not to have bacon. Is there a way that I could get a new salad? Mm-hmm. And, you know, the other thing is that I know as a candidate, my number one objective is to be answering questions and getting to know this person that I'm going to be working with. Because it needs to be a two-way street. Do I want to work for this person? Again, it's being gracious and also getting what you need. I don't detract from, and I don't see it as a detraction if someone, you know, says, oh, you know, I have bacon on a salad. And so I think it's appropriate for somebody to call that out.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. What do you think about the group interview? So if, let's say, I'm hiring someone that has to work with others in a group, is it appropriate for the group to be part of the interview process, or is that overkill? Is that just too many inputs? What do you think about that?
I think it has to be managed carefully. And for example, group interviews can enable a team to have access to a candidate, not asking the same questions over and over. But then it takes pre-planning, and so you assign, whoever's leading the search, assign people. Kim, you're going to address how they deal with problems. Jonathan is going to deal with how you deal with data. How do you make decisions? How do you deal with conflict? So that they're getting different questions, and it's a deeper array. And then you're not replicating. And I think it can save time. Now, the other side is that you also need to know your audience, because I have been in team interviews where you have one person that commands all of the time, or isn't necessarily hospitable,
Right.
And that can be a real turnoff. So it has to be handled carefully, but it can be a powerful tool done well.
Okay. I'm curious, I think it was you mentioned that 85% of the workforce is not engaged.
That is correct, yes.
Why is that? Why is that number so high? What are we missing here?
Well, not only what are we missing, but what is it costing us? A recent report that came out right before the holidays suggested that in the US, we lose between 450 and $550 billion annually. If you think about that, that's the combined revenues annually of BP and Exxon, or roughly the revenues of Walmart.
Right.
That's lost to this country every year because of lack of engagement. And, it is having people in roles where they're not afforded the respect of using all of their skills, having opportunity for promotion, being treated civilly and respectfully. And employees really think of, this renter mentality. I show up, I do what I'm told, I complete transactions. You lose so much of an individual. And that's really why I think engagement is as poor as it is right now.
So as a consultant, if you were to do the research and discover that an organization does have a poor level of engagement, what's your recommendation? What are the top 2-3 things that this company ought to do immediately?
The first place I always look is at middle managers or the supervisors, because those are the folks that have the greatest impact in the organization. And are they providing feedback with regularity? Are they providing coaching and encouragement and development? And if they're not, that's where that can be very, very powerful. Gallup has said repeatedly over the last 5 years that more of our managers than not are not equipped to be managers. And I think as leaders, we really need to step in and take people out of those management roles that aren't ready, that aren't capable, because it costs us dearly with engagement, and we really need to address that. Start with the middle managers, though. Yeah. That will have your greatest impact.
That's very interesting. One of the things that I am super passionate about is helping leaders learn critical coaching skills. So as you know, I run a coaching company, and we coach the highly driven population, the leaders, the executives, the entrepreneurs, the high potential leaders, that population. And what I have found is that leaders, we've actually run surveys on hundreds and hundreds of leaders, and there's a direct correlation between leaders who evaluate their own coaching skills as high and the satisfaction they have with the productivity of their workforce, their teams. So the higher their coaching skills, the stronger their coaching skills, the more satisfied they are with the productivity of their team. And that is a straight line, a direct correlation. And so we've taken it upon ourselves to do as much as we can, not only to coach our leaders, but while we are coaching them, to help them acquire critical coaching skills. So not only are they getting coached, they are learning coaching as they are getting coached, that they can apply then in their own environment. So, our key strategy is really developing leaders by teaching them coaching skills.
It's absolutely critical, Kim. We, in one engagement that I was working in, we were moving to a coaching environment. And this was in a call center, and they would have team meetings at the beginning of each shift. And I was watching this one team leader, and he says, "Okay, everybody, I want you to answer those phone calls, and I want you to be accurate 100% of the time." And he's like yelling.
Right.
And so after he finished, I called him over and I said, "Hey, Z, like, what was that?" And he said, "That's coaching." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah, I watched football movies this weekend." And he said, "They yell and they get in people's faces." And so we need to train people of what it is to be a coach and what it is to be a coach leader, a coach manager, because that is a very different practice than what might be on the sidelines.
100%. I could not agree more. And I also think that there's a lot of guidance out there about what coaching is that isn't necessarily useful. So, right? So what is true coaching? How do you get to the heart of the matter? How do you help people think in ways that will easily allow them to reach their goals and the goals of the organization? Very much so.
For me, as an executive coach, I always say that my job is to help support the person who's trying to find the best of them.
Yeah.
And so, and so it is inspirational, it is explorational, it is a combination of hard thinking and reflecting, as well as feeling. And I think that to know oneself is the best starting place to be a coach and to be coached. And so that's something that I feel very strongly about.
I agree wholeheartedly. So I have one last question.
Yes.
What do we do to keep really great people in our organizations? What do we need to do to retain them more effectively?
Ask them. Beverly Kay has just the greatest story. And, she talks about even when she was first starting her publication and training business. And, and she said that, she had 2 people that worked in sales and, it was a couple people operation. And so she took the one gal out and they walked on the beach in Los Angeles. And she said, "So what will keep you here another year?" And the gal said, "New business cards." And, and she said, "With the title of vice president." And Dr. K looked at her and said, "Well, we're pretty small. We don't really have titles like that." And she said, "Oh, I don't want to, it's not for me. It's for my grandmother. When I go see her in Florida, I want to be able to say, 'Grandma, look, I'm a vice president.'" Now it may, is it always that simple? No. But if you ask, what will keep you here? What are you looking for? How can I best support your development and engagement? And keep asking until you get a response that you can actually do something about. Yeah, inevitably somebody will say, "Oh, I want to get a big raise." Well, what will that raise do for you? And what does that signal or signify? And so that's why just really having these conversations with people to understand what their motivation is.
That's a great answer. I love it. Jeanette, how do people find you?
I'm on LinkedIn, Jeanette K. Winters, and that's the best place. I conduct all of my business through and with that platform.
And that's how we met. Clearly, we are talking with someone with a lot of experience, a lot of wisdom, a lot of exposure to employment, retention, hiring issues. please tap into her expertise, find her on LinkedIn, Jeanette K. Winters. And Jeanette, thank you. Thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for sharing your expertise and your wisdom. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Great fun, Kim. Thank you.